Hello, this is Billy. Today I'm putting new brake pads on the front end of a 2014 Kia Forte. So far I've pulled the vehicle in. I've got the emergency brake on. I've got some blocks in front and behind the rear wheels to keep the car from shaking or rocking while I'm working on it. And now I'm fixing to take off the lug nuts, jack the car up, take off the lug nuts, set the tire underneath the car as a safety device in case the car was to try to fall while I'm working on it. So here we go. Okay, before I jack the car up, loosen all of the lug nuts while the tire is still on the ground. So loosen those a little bit and then jack the car up. Okay, I have jacked the car up, removed the lug nuts all the way. Now I'm sliding the tire under the car. That way, while I'm working on the car, if the jack happens to fail, that way I'm gonna make sure no harm, no foul. I've slid the tire under there. Now I'm sliding the board. That way, if it was to crash down on the tire, it wouldn't do any damage to the car or the tire. That way the board will absorb the impact in any event. So now here we go. Tires out of the way. Now we can see what's going on. This is your brake caliper. On the back side of the brake caliper, there's a bolt here, and there's a bolt that looks just like it on the bottom side. On this vehicle, it's a 9/16. I'm gonna put a wrench on there. I'm gonna pull both, I'm gonna take both the top and bottom. I'm gonna take that bolt out, I'm gonna take that bolt out, and I'm gonna set them to the side. Okay, I have loosened the bolts. Now I'm just turning them. Now I'm just turning them the rest of the way by hand and setting them to the side. That's the bottom one. Now the top one, taking it out and setting it also to the side. And see, now with both of those bolts out, that caliper is just sitting there. So I can actually just grab this caliper and pull out. See how that just pulls out? Now that brake line is attached to it, so you don't want it to just hang. This thing's a little bit heavy. It's not real heavy, but it's a little bit heavy. You don't want that to hang on that brake line and cause a brake leak. That would be an expensive repair. So I'm gonna set it up here like this. I got it sitting on top, and if you would like to be more safe, you could take a wire and tie this up to this spring up here. You know, tie a wire to it. That way, if you're working on it and it tried to fall, the wire would catch it instead of it hanging on the brake line, because that's an expensive repair. So now we are going to need to push the caliper back, okay? This round piece, that's the brake caliper. We've got to force it back. We got to squeeze on it and force it back all the way, because see, these old brake pads, they're thin, and to pull these brake pads out, it just pull it toward yourself. Pull it toward yourself on the top and bottom, and you see it's got that little ear on the top. It's got that little ear on the bottom, and it just fits in those little grooves. So putting it in, you just stick it in that little groove on the top and bottom, and then push it in. And see, now it's back in. So to take it out, you just pull it toward yourself on the bottom and the top. And there's a little metal clip thing in there. There's a little tiny metal clip thing on the bottom and top. They're pretty good about staying in place if you're careful, but it wouldn't be hard to figure out how to get it back in there if it did fall out on you. Don't worry about that. So you see, these old brake pads are thinner than the new ones. The new ones are going to be a lot thicker. So because the new pads are going to be a lot thicker, so that's one side out. Let's go ahead and get the back side out too, and just go away from yourself with it, and it comes out. Okay, so the new pads are going to be a lot thicker. So because the new pads are thicker, we've got to get this piece pushed back. We got to push that back. Now, it's an important thing that the cap on the reservoir has been removed. So up here, here's the reservoir, the cap. Take the cap off, set it to the side, because when you push that caliper back, that fluid's going to come up and out of this thing, because the fluid's got to go somewhere. That's why you take this cap off. Take that cap off, and now we're ready to set up to squeeze this back. Now I've got a big clamp I'm going to put on there. I'm also going to take the pad that was, see this pad? This pad has a round mark on it because that's the one that round thing was pushing on it right there. So I'm actually going to slide this in there like that. Now I'm going to put a clamp right here and squeeze on it with a clamp to push that back. So this other pad has a different mark on it. See how it's got that mark there and that mark there? That's because that's the one that was on this side. That mark and that mark. See how that marks were on it? Because this is the one that was inside here like this. In any event, so now I'm gonna get the clamp set up. Okay, so I've kind of repositioned the caliper in this position to make it better and easier working with the clamp. All I did was just barely turn it a little bit and making sure that I'm not getting the holes back there in a bind or anything. So this is the brake pad, the old one. It's got the mark on it from the round thing, from all the pushing on it that it's done since it's been on the car. So I've got that like that. Now I've got this is a 6-inch clamp that I'm putting on there. And in this position, I'm gonna have to do this with 2 hands. And right now I'm just trying to talk to you because I'm having to hold the phone with 1 hand. And in any event, I've got the brake pad like this. And now I'm just gonna get that clamp over here where my thumb is and back here where this finger is. I'm gonna get the clamp in that position, and I'm gonna start using the clamp to squeeze and push. It's gonna push this thing back. See, the clamp's gonna be on the brake pad and then on the back side of here. Okay, now here it is. The brake pad is there. The clamp is on the brake pad on this side. This side is on the back side over here. And now I'm just gonna turn and turn on this clamp. And as I turn and turn, this caliper is going to get squished all the way back like it's supposed to be for brand new pads. And as I do that, the brake fluid that's in that reservoir is gonna come up and possibly out, but that's okay. You're gonna end up with more than what you need on the brake fluid anyway, because as the brake pads get worn down and brake fluid is added to it to fill the void, so when you put new pads on, you end up with more fluid than you need. So some of it spilling out onto the floor, that's pretty easy to clean up. It's you don't need only so much brake fluid in any event. So here we go. Okay, so I've used the clamp and turned on the clamp until this is all the way back. You will know when you're all the way back because you won't be able to turn it anymore. So now that the caliper's pushed back, now all I got to do is take the clamp off. Okay, I have taken off the clamp and set it to the side. Now the caliper's pushed all the way back now. This old brake shoe that we used to put the clamp on, we're just going to set that to the side. See, now the caliper's all the way back. It needs to be all the way back like this, because the new pads are a lot thicker than the old pads you took off. You'll never get this on without pushing that back, and it's not hard to do in any event. So now I'm ready to put new brake shoes in. Okay, these are my old brake shoes, these are my new brake shoes, and to make sure I'm putting them in exactly the way they need to be, you can tell the round mark, this round mark, I made sure this one matched this one perfectly, and this round mark is where the caliper was. And the caliper's on the back side, so this is the one that matches this one. I'm going to put it on the back side, and this one looks identical to this one. And you see this mark here and this mark here, that is on the front side closest to me. So I'm going to put this one on the side closest to me, and this one where the caliper was, and putting that one on the back. And that's the easiest way to tell, to put them in the exact way, is by the markings of how they came out. Okay, notice that it's got this little ear on this end of the pad, and it has this other little ear on the other end of the pad, or brake shoe, and one side of it's metal and one side of it's actually the brake shoe. This is the side that's going, this side is the brake pad. So this side here is what's going to rub against this here. You want to make sure you're putting it in the right direction and in the right place. There's a little clip thing. You can hear it kind of bouncing around there. This little clip thing can kind of come up a little, and this one on top, it kind of wiggles around too. So before you try to stick that little ears in there, just push on it. Push up so that it's in there where it needs to be, and then down here, push on that one, push it down so that they're right where they need to be, so that they're not hanging down or sticking up a little bit and causing it to not want to go in. So then you just line up these little ears. You stick that little ear inside that little spot, and then you stick that little ear in that little spot, and then you just shove it in and kind of sandwich it in. I did the same thing to the back side. The back one's already in there, and that was the front one going in there. So now both of the brake shoes are in there. So now all I'm going to do is pick this up, and I'm going to slide it into place. And when I slide it into place, these little things here, they're kind of squishy. I want you to notice. See how that's squishing around? And see, when you pull the caliper out and set it up here, these right here, they come out. So squish it and it goes in. So when you're putting the caliper and you're trying to get the caliper to go on, with two hands, you're probably going to use both hands to kind of squeeze them in. So the bottom one and the top one, squeeze them in so that you can get the caliper in place where it needs to go. Okay? Okay, so with both hands, I was able to squeeze and get the caliper slid into place, and now get the bolts going in. And in a second, I'll put a wrench on them and get them tied. But when I tighten it, see, this is actually aluminum. This is an aluminum bolt. So when you tighten that, you do not want to tighten it too much. Just tighten it a little bit, because that's all it needs. In any event, you tighten that too much and it breaks because it's aluminum, that's a very expensive repair, okay? So now I'm gonna put my wrench on it and snug them down a little bit. Okay, well, there we go. I put my wrench on them, I snugged them down a little bit. I didn't go too tight because that's aluminum in there. You don't want to have an expensive repair. So now everything's back. It's got new brake shoes. All I got to do now is get the tire put back on and lower the car down. Under here, notice there's a little puddle of brake fluid that came out, and that's because when you squeeze that caliper with that clamp, that brake fluid, that's why you take the cap off. Take the cap off, and that brake fluid has a place to go out, and it just comes out the top there, and that's perfectly fine. It's no problem. And see, now we're way more than enough fluid, and so there we go. I'm actually going to take like a long straw and suck out some of that fluid, because the full line's down there. There's no reason for it to be over full. So I will use a long straw and suck out some of that brake fluid and put the cap back on, put the tire back on, and take it for a test drive. But there you go. Hopefully this video helps someone. Bye.